Story 1. This took place a few summers ago when I was still living with my parents in the same house I grew up in. I was 17 at the time. On one random weekend, my parents decided to leave for a short trip without me, which almost never happened. They were the kind of people who were always around, always keeping the house tidy, and rarely stepping away for personal time. In all my years, I could not recall a single occasion when they both left together. Naturally, I saw it as a rare chance, and I invited over MJ, my girlfriend back then, to spend the weekend. It felt like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have the house to myself without interruptions. The J had a mischievous streak that made every situation feel more thrilling than it should have been. Honestly, that was part of why we did not last, but that is another story. Given her personality, I should have guessed what was coming. The moment she noticed the pool glowing in the backyard, her eyes lit up with mischief. She grinned and told me we should go skinny dipping, like it was the most obvious idea in the world. I said the neighbors might notice, but she teased me and pointed out that this chance would probably never come again. We had gone swimming many times before, but never done something so daring. At least, I had not. I was always the polite, careful kid. Even now, I sometimes scold myself for being too nice. Anyway, it took some convincing before I gave in, but MJ had a charm that was hard to resist. Her excitement rubbed off on me, and soon we were laughing and splashing together in the warm pool under the cool night sky. As cheesy as it sounds, the moment was oddly romantic. The warmth of the water against the summer air made it feel almost unreal. Let me describe the setup. The pool sat just beyond large bay windows that looked into the living room. With the interior lights on and the yard dark, the view inside was crystal clear. It looked like a lit dollhouse from where we floated. I know that sounds strange, but if you saw it, you would understand. For a while, that view gave me comfort, as if the house itself was still within reach, while we drifted outside in our own little world. That comfort quickly faded. As MJ was talking, I happened to glance toward the windows and froze. I saw something I never expected. On one far wall inside the living room was a shadow. It was faint but recognizable, and the way it moved made it clear that it was not random. I watched it shift as though someone was walking further into the house. My chest tightened. Panic rushed over me, but I did not want to alarm MJ. I leaned in and whispered that we needed to leave the pool. She did not argue. She followed quickly as I climbed out, trying to dry off without making noise. I told her to hide in the pool house, turn off the light, and stay quiet until I came back. Her playful mood had vanished. I could see she was terrified, but she held herself together impressively. She nodded and slipped into the pool house without a word. I crept through the back door into the kitchen. I had been raised to handle problems head-on, so I grabbed a knife from the counter and began searching the rooms. It was obvious that someone had been inside. Little signs stood out everywhere. A chair in the dining room sat slightly pushed out, as if someone had just risen from it. A picture frame on the wall was crooked. A mug I had not used rested on the counter. These were details no normal burglar would waste time creating. As I walked through the house, the thought grew that I was not dealing with a thief at all. My pulse was out of control, and I expected to be attacked at any moment, but no one appeared. I checked every ground floor room, but found nothing. Every door was locked and every window sealed tight. Nothing made sense. If someone had entered, how had they vanished? The longer I searched, the more my bravery collapsed. Finally, I gave in and called the police. They showed up fast and went over the house and yard carefully, but found no trace of entry. No broken locks, no prints outside, nothing. They could not explain how anyone might have gotten in. One officer suggested maybe I scared someone off, but I doubted it. By then it was so late, there was little else to do. The officers left. MJ and I were too unsettled to relax, but we had nowhere else to go. We locked every door, blocked the bedroom, and tried to rest. Around 4 in the morning, I woke to the unmistakable sound of floorboards creaking above us. At first, I hoped I had imagined it, but the noise was far too real. Someone was definitely moving upstairs. I kept listening and soon realized the creaking above me had changed. The sounds had shifted into steady footsteps descending the stairs, as if someone inside was quietly trying to leave the house. A wave of adrenaline hit me as I grabbed the knife I had left on the nightstand. I whispered for MJ to stay where she was, then rushed out of the bedroom. I moved quickly, but tried to stay silent, every nerve in my body on edge. By the time I reached the front hallway, my stomach dropped. The front door stood wide open. Whoever had been inside was already gone. I did not even think about calling the police again. It would have been pointless. By then, there was nothing left for them to investigate. All I could do was check every lock in the house again before heading back to bed. The following morning, though, the full reality of what had happened hit me. Every kitchen knife we owned had vanished. Not just one or two, but all of them. An act that made no rational sense. Along with the knives, smaller belongings were missing too. Some loose cash, a couple of watches, and a few electronics had been taken. But it was the missing knives that kept me unsettled. It felt less like theft and more like a deliberate warning, although I could never figure out what it meant. When my parents returned and I explained everything, they reacted with surprising calm and understanding. I am not the kind of person who frightens easily, and honestly, the incident did not traumatize me the way it might have shaken others. Still, the strangeness of it all has never left me. To this day, I have no idea how that person managed to get inside or where they hid while the police searched every corner of the house. It remains one of those eerie experiences that lodges in the back of your mind forever. Story 2. This happened last year during Holly Bash weekend. I go to Rowan University, and for anyone who does not know, Holly Bash is Rowan's big spring festival. It is kind of like our own version of Coachella. It takes place every April on Hollybush Green, right next to the historic Hollybush Mansion. There are rides, food trucks, games on the lawn, and a concert with a mystery headliner. Pretty much the entire campus shows up. It is supposed to be the most exciting day of the year. I was a sophomore then, and like most other students, I stayed out late that night. Rowan is in a fairly quiet suburban town. Glassboro never really feels dangerous, even in the early hours of the morning. That is probably why I did not think twice when I left my friend's dorm at 2:30 in the morning and started walking back to Chestnut Hall by myself. What I did not know was that earlier in the night, around 12:30, a group of masked people, maybe 10 or more, had been spotted riding bikes and banging on doors across campus, including outside Chestnut. I never witnessed that myself, but people were posting about it online while it happened. I was not paying attention to any of it. I just wanted to get back to my dorm. So around 2:30, I swiped into Chestnut Hall, walked inside, and started heading toward the stairs. That was when I noticed someone sitting in the lounge. At first, it did not strike me as unusual. It is a dorm, after all. Students are awake at every hour. But this guy was wearing a mask. Not a medical mask. It was a full black ski mask. He was not moving, not speaking, just sitting there silently. I froze for a second, completely thrown off. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. I could not figure out why he was sitting there or what he was planning, but the sight filled me with dread. Then suddenly, he jumped up from the couch and turned toward me in one fast motion. I did not think. I just reacted. I bolted down the hall and ducked into the closest bathroom, locking the door behind me. I stayed inside for at least 5 minutes, long enough for the hallway outside to go quiet. I did not want to seem paranoid, but something in my gut told me not to take chances. I cracked the door open after a while and peeked out. The hall looked empty. I figured he might have left. I stepped out cautiously. I did not want to run and draw more attention to myself, so I walked slowly toward the opposite exit. That was when I saw him again. He was still in the lounge, still masked. This time, he was right across from where I needed to pass. His bike leaned against the door, and a chair was wedged against the frame, as if it had been placed there on purpose. I had pepper spray on my keychain. I pulled it out and held it in my hand. I did not point it or threaten him directly. I just made it obvious that I had it, hoping that would be enough. My chest was pounding so hard that I could hear the blood in my ears. I forced myself to walk past him. He did not move. He did not speak. It felt like his goal was simply to be seen, as if scaring me was the only purpose. I refused to look back. I pushed open the other exit and stepped outside. I had made it halfway to Magnolia when I heard bikes rolling up behind me. 3 more masked figures came up beside me. They never touched me or grabbed me, but they taunted me as they rode along. They were laughing, saying things I could not make out. By itself, that might not sound too bad, but a few of them were waving what looked like guns. Maybe they were fake or airsoft, but they looked real enough to terrify me. I tried to ignore them, but they kept close, riding just beyond arm's reach. I hurried to Magnolia and texted a friend to come meet me. He walked me back to Chestnut, which made me feel safer. The bikers had disappeared by then. I did not call the police that night. Nothing had physically happened to me, but I was shaken. I cannot fully explain the fear I felt. The next morning, I told my mom, and she ended up filing a report. Later, some of my guy friends texted me, saying they had also been approached by masked riders, and some of them had brandished guns. Nobody was harmed, but it was enough for campus police to start taking action. Rumors spread about who the masked people were. Some thought it was just local kids trying to cause trouble. It was the part with the guns that unsettled me the most. It meant that armed strangers, not students, might have entered my dorm that night, the building where I lived. Ever since then, I have been nervous about walking home alone. Story 3. This took place 2 summers ago, back when I was still with Amanda. I never shared it until now, not because I was embarrassed, but because I did not want to risk exposing her or her family by accident. Now that our relationship has been over for more than a year, I feel comfortable talking about it. That summer, Amanda was working as a camp counselor for a program in the city. The camp was not exactly close, about a 25-minute drive from her quiet and wealthy neighborhood, but she enjoyed the job for reasons I never really understood. I always thought it was a bit below her considering her ambitions, but I never said that out loud. Her house looked exactly like you would expect for a family in that kind of suburb. It had a big yard, 3 floors, high ceilings, and plenty of space for events. So when the camp counselors were deciding where to host their end-of-summer party, Amanda's house was the obvious pick. I might be making it sound like it was her first time hosting something like that, but it was not. It was only the first one I ever attended, since we had not been together the year before. Her parents were gone that weekend. To be honest, they were always gone. Out of respect, I will not go too far into details, but Amanda's family was unusual. Her relationship with her parents seemed more like 3 coworkers than an actual family. Everything between them felt transactional, and it was painfully clear that they were all different shades of the same insecure, self-absorbed personality, even though they hated being compared to each other. That might sound a little harsh. Her dad was pretty easygoing, and I liked him, but feelings were not really part of their household. Anyway, the party was crowded. Dozens of people packed into the house and spilled out into the backyard. The atmosphere was energetic and fun, and most of the guests were laid back. The exception was one guy named Pete. The second he showed up, I had a bad feeling about him. He was loud, overly sure of himself, and kept hovering around Amanda. It was not small talk either. He was openly flirting with her. He was not even trying to hide it. I felt disrespected, but I did not want to create a scene. Amanda and I had been dating for a while, and while I usually trusted her, she had a tendency to be a little too friendly with guys. It had always been a sore spot for us, and I knew bringing it up would only spark an argument. Instead of confronting Pete directly, I came up with another approach. I decided to act like his best friend. Every time he finished a drink, I offered him another. We chatted, we laughed, and before long, Pete was drinking faster than he should have. I might not look like a heavy drinker, but my tolerance is high thanks to my Irish and Mexican background. My plan was to get him so drunk, he either embarrassed himself or passed out, solving the problem either way. Surprisingly, the plan worked faster than I expected. By midnight, he was slumped on the basement couch, drooling into a pillow. I felt pretty pleased with myself, but Amanda immediately caught on. She accused me of setting him up, which I denied at first. After some back and forth, I admitted that I had helped things along a little. We argued briefly, nothing major, just another disagreement for the list. Still, I could not shake the sense that my petty move had cast a shadow over the night. As the hours went on, the house grew louder, messier, and more chaotic. I stepped outside for a breather. The driveway was quiet and cool, a perfect contrast to the noise inside. I leaned against Amanda's car, staring at the stars, when I noticed a figure standing near the edge of the property. The person was still, just standing under the faint light of the street lamp. I narrowed my eyes, trying to make out who it was. When he did not move, I decided to approach. Maybe it was the alcohol pushing me to do it, because normally I would not have. I asked, "Hey, can I help you?" Trying to sound calm, but firm. The figure took a few slow steps toward me, and then stopped. It was definitely a man, though I could not see any clear features in the dark. He did not answer my question. Instead, he asked, "Are your parents home?" The question caught me off guard. It was not just what he asked, but the way he said it, as if he already knew. Before I could react, he repeated it, this time mentioning Amanda's parents by name. That detail made my unease shift into full suspicion. He knew who they were. I lied and said they were inside, even though I suspected he knew I did not live there and that I was lying. I hoped it might make him think twice about whatever he had in mind. The man nodded once and simply said, "Okay," before turning and walking away. I expected him to head for a car, but he did not. Instead, he just walked straight down the street until the darkness swallowed him. I kept watching, but I could not tell where he went. Something about the whole thing unsettled me, but I forced myself to brush it off. I went back into the house and eventually ended up in the basement, playing ping pong with a few others. Since Amanda had a pool table upstairs, most of the guests were up there, leaving the basement quieter. I was not in the mood to be overly social, so the calmer setting suited me better. At one point during the night, I heard the front doorbell ring. At first, I brushed it off. After all, it was a party, so people arriving and leaving was nothing unusual. Still, something nagged at me, like I had overlooked an important detail. While I absent-mindedly smacked a ping-pong ball across the table, the realization hit me. Amanda had told everyone to use the back entrance, which did not even have a doorbell. That meant someone had gone to the front door, which was not part of the plan. I excused myself from the game and went upstairs, telling myself I was probably worrying too much, but still needing to know. As I passed Amanda's room, I saw she was sprawled out on her bed, fast asleep, completely unaware of the noise and chaos going on around her. That was when I realized something. I was probably the only person in the house who was still somewhat sober. I flicked off her light and carefully shut the door so she could rest. When I reached the front entrance, I saw Bella standing there. I asked her if she knew who had been ringing the doorbell. She was extremely drunk, and trying to get a clear answer from her was nearly impossible. Even when sober, Ella was not exactly the sharpest person, which only made things worse. After some rambling, she finally mumbled that an older man had been at the door, claiming to be a family friend who needed to return something he had borrowed. My stomach dropped, and I shouted, "You let him in?" She just gave a careless shrug and wandered away, likely off to find whichever guy she would end up with that night. I rushed into Amanda's room, and what I saw confirmed my fear. Drawers were open, jewelry boxes were empty, and her closet looked like someone had gone through everything. The stranger had robbed the place. I figured he was already gone. The empty boxes and ransacked drawers seemed like proof that he had taken what he wanted and left. I was about to step back out when something in the mirror caught my eye. It was a faint movement, like someone ducking out of sight behind me. I spun around, but not fast enough. Before I could react, the man lunged and tackled me to the floor. The impact knocked the air out of me, and I gasped for breath. He grabbed at my shirt, clawing as if he meant to rip it apart. Somehow, with a surge of panic more than actual strength, I shoved him off. He scrambled to his feet, bolted across the room, and hurled himself out of one of the open windows. I rushed over just in time to see him drop onto the roof, and then into the side yard before sprinting away into the dark. I did not try to chase him. I knew I would never catch him. I just stood there, shaken and out of breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The damage was already done. He was gone. But the whole ordeal had drained me. I no longer had the energy to play watchdog over the party. At the same time, I did not want to be the one to end things myself. So I called the police and asked them to clear everyone out. The local officers knew Amanda's family, so they were not going to arrest anyone or make it into a major incident. They arrived, shut the party down, and I quietly thanked them for handling it. Afterward, I went downstairs, shook Pete awake, and told him to get himself home. He threw up before finally calling an Uber. The next morning, Amanda had no choice but to inform her parents about what had happened. They were furious, which made sense, but Amanda barely reacted. She always had that rebellious streak, brushing off authority as if it did not matter. Her parents did not call the police either. Since there were no cameras in the house, they assumed nothing would come of it. I am still left wondering how that man knew Amanda's parents' names and that they were not home. Sometimes I think the intruder had a personal connection to them. Looking back, that night revealed things about Amanda that I had ignored. Her indifference, her recklessness, they were all warning signs I should have noticed earlier. As the saying goes, hindsight is 20/20.